let me leave you with this. I thought people who prepared were crazy, wore tinfoil hats, and were paranoid. We would laugh at and mock preppers. Thought they were nuts. Nothing will happen. The stores will provide for us. And then March of 2020 proved us wrong. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the meat and potatoes of yesterday's live stream, and I hope you stay for it because this is a great story of how a couple began their journey of preparedness. Prior to March of 2020, we may have only kept 3 days worth of food in our home. Our small chest freezer was always empty except for maybe a pack of chicken and ground beef. We may have kept 1 can of Lysol, 1 bundle of toilet paper and paper towels, 1 small case of dog food for my little dog, etc. at any given time, because in our minds, it would always be there. When the panic broke out in March, my husband and I were still asleep until I had to run to the store a few days later. I never seen anything like it in my entire life. I could not find anything. I walked out of several stores empty-handed. Shelves were wiped clean. Coolers were completely empty. Freezers were stripped. There was no dog food. Fresh produce was wiped out. Canned goods were gone. Dairy gone. Water gone. I drove home wondering, what did I just see? And now, what was I going to do about it? Let me see. Her husband stopped at several stores the same day when he got off of work, and he had the same luck that she did. He came home and said that, what are we going to do? And we were down to a few rolls of toilet paper, no bottled water, almost all out of food, and the dog was running out of food as well. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. I tossed my pride in the trash and I called my mother. She has been a prepper for all of her life, but I never took that mindset. She helped us out. This will never happen again to us, she said. In April of 2020, we slowly started scrounging up what we were able to get our hands on due to the extreme shortages and the limits that were placed on the things that we could find. Each and every weekend, we would drive 100+ miles to get what we could. I cleaned out the den at the very back of our home, put that useless junk in storage, and sold the rest, and turned it into a walk-in pantry. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure will add value to their lives. She says, we put heavy-duty shelves and large, heavy storage tubs up slowly and started filling them up. Day by day, week by week, we worked at it. There were some days that I would stop at a different store each day after work, and I would get 1 item out of each store. A bottle of hand sanitizer out of this store, a can of wipes out of another store, the same for my husband. We sat down in the floor and made a master list of what we use and eat, such as canned and dry goods, pasta, drinks, condiments, OTC meds, over-the-counter meds, personal hygiene, everything. They made a list of everything that they use on a regular basis. All right. So she continues to say what other stuff like paper products, shelf-stable milk, etc. We planned the list out carefully. As you say, prep what you eat and eat what you prep. When the stores got somewhat back on track and the limits were removed, we were able to do a little more each week. We never panic bought nor wiped out shelves during this process. It was slow and steady. After about a year of this, I got this real strong sense of urgency to put it into high gear, and we did. We have a Sam's membership, and she says, and I tell you, those FedEx trucks were coming to my house 3 to 4 times a week. We were going to the stores a couple of times per week. We ordered or had delivered a 19.8 cubic foot freezer to go with our tiny 7 cubic foot freezer to stock up on meats and frozen goods. Just as we got well stocked, we started hearing about inflation. And then there were more and more, lo and behold, It took like a ton of bricks. So she said, just as they were getting, stocked up, they started hearing about inflation, and lo and behold, it took like a ton of bricks. And I'm sure that we can all understand where she's coming from on that, because that was probably more recent than 2020. And we have farmers being paid. And she says, we have farmers being paid not to farm, warehouses, distribution centers, and food processing plants burning down, like we talked about earlier, and culling the birds due to the flu. Us, along with our little 10-pound Chihuahua, has at least a year worth of food, over-the-counter medicines, cleaning supplies, etc. And we're bypassing a 2-year supply and working on 3. Let me leave you with this. I thought people who prepared were crazy, wore tinfoil hats, and were paranoid. We would laugh at and mock preppers. Thought they were nuts. Nothing will happen. The stores will provide for us. And then March of 2020 proved us wrong. When you get knocked on your butt, have to ask yourself, and you have to ask your mom for help to get a real dose of reality. Preppers are not so crazy. We are those crazy preppers now. We are learning and growing each day and adding to our needs. I never thought I would see times like this, and I'm glad it only took just that one time to wake up. And imagine that, ladies and gentlemen, how many people are still not awake after having experienced probably the very same thing that this couple experienced, and they're still not awake, thinking that they'll be all right. Everything will be all right. She says, we stopped spending money like we were in we stopped spending money like we were in Congress and started living our best lives. We paid off a ton of debt and started making sure we could survive. Some people my husband and I work with are still asleep and are in denial and constantly blowing and going. We keep our mouths shut and we continue to be the gray man and gray woman. And ladies and gentlemen, a prepper is born. And I want you all to concentrate on a few of the things that she said there. She said that it took them about a year or a little over a year to stock up. And she said that they did it slow and steady. And what I find most important in there is that they did it together. It is so much nicer when you have that support, that you're doing it together with your family instead of doing it on your own. It's much nicer that way, a lot less stressful, and you can make it fun doing that instead. So I want you all to know out there that for those of you that maybe just started your preparedness journey and maybe haven't even started at all, that it's possible. You can do it if you really put your mind to it. You can make it fun. You can make it, make it an adventure like it sounds like they did, right? And you still have some time to prepare. Some people think that the end of the world is going to be this summer. Some people think that it'll be next year. It doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen, because when the end of the world gets here, it's the end of the world. Who cares after that? You better care about what kind of a life you've lived when the end of the world comes. But if you know that it's not going to be the end of the world next week, then you should be prepping for next week. Not necessarily for you, but for yourself and your families.